name is Shania Bowler, and today I'll be interviewing Mr. Little. So, what branch of the military did you serve?
I served in the United States Air Force.
What made you choose that branch?
My father, who was a World War II veteran, was in the Army. I had an older brother that was in the Navy, and I just chose the Air Force.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted, but it was during the Vietnam conflict when they were drafting 18-year-olds.
Where were you living at the time you were in the military?
Okay, when I joined the military, I had graduated high school from Manual High School in class of 1969, and I got a job working at Caterpillar Incorporated, and I was there for 6 months. I hired in September 1969 in the Caterpillar, and I joined the Air Force on March 19, 1970.
What do you recall from the first days of your service, in the service?
Well, basic training, going to basic training. Never actually have been away from home for time like that. 6 weeks of basic training and meeting all kinds of different people from all over, other recruits.
Tell me about your boot camp experiences.
It was pretty tough. We had drill instructors. We'd get up they'd have reveille at 5 o'clock in the morning. We'd get up at 5 in the morning, get dressed, and go out and march before breakfast. We had hikes and marches daily.
How did you get through it?
It wasn't easy, but as a matter of fact, there's some people, when you come in as a group, you're assigned to a squadron. And in that squadron, you had X number of recruits that stayed in the barracks together. And some of the recruits, what they call be washing out. In other words, if you got to a point where you self-destructed or messed up, you got placed back. Normally it was a 30-day process for basic training, so you had to go through the full 30 days and graduate to get moved on. There were some recruits that didn't make it. Some of them they would sit back. Say you could be at day number 25 and you did something wrong, they could put you back anywhere from day 1 up to day 25 with a new group of people.
Do you remember your instructors?
Yeah, I had two drill sergeants, Sergeant Gully and I believe his name was Sergeant Wright, and they were tip-top, in shape recruits, and they whooped us into shape.
Which war did you serve?
I served in the Vietnam conflict.
Where exactly did you go?
I did my basic training at Lackland Air Force Base. That's the home of the Air Force. That's where all the trainees go to. After completing my basic training, you're assigned to tech school. That's where they decide what field they're going to send you when you go to training for that. I did my tech school at Wichita Falls, Texas, Shepherd Air Force Base, and I was chosen to go into the medical field as a psychiatric specialist. That was my AFSC, that's your job specialty code.
Did you see combat?
No, I did not. However, I've been in during the Vietnam conflict when POWs returned. The facility that I worked at, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which had psychiatric facilities, was one of 4 bases in the United States that soldiers could return to for psychiatric evaluations and counseling.
Are there many casualties in your unit?
In my actual unit, there wasn't because I was a medic and I was stateside. I was never sent overseas. There was only 4 bases in the United States that I could serve that had facilities for my job code.
What are some of your most memorable experiences?
Well, I remember you had to grow up fast. I mean, the TIs, they did not baby you. They whip you into shape. They didn't take any back talk. When they barked, when they said jump, you wanted to know how high.
Were you a prisoner of war?
No, I was not.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
I was awarded the Good Conduct Medal, and also during my tour at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, I received the Airman of the Quarter award from my unit, from the medical center.
What was your rank in the military?
I rose from a Airman Basic, which is anybody that basic when you come in. I rose to the rank of E4 Sergeant. I was the crew leader on my shift at the hospital.
How did you stay in touch with your family when you were far away?
Well, actually, when I first went in, you're in basic training, you got to go by yourself. You can't take family with you. My wife and I, after I got finished my basic training and got my tech school assignment, and I got my place where I was going to go to, which was Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I initially went there by myself, and my wife and child joined me later.
What was the food like?
Working in a hospital, I have to say the food was fantastic because, you know, when you're in a hospital, you want people sick or medically injured, so they had some of the best food, and you ate right there at cafeteria in the hospital.
Did you have plenty of supplies?
Definitely we had supplies on our unit. There was things, because it was a psychiatric ward, we had restraints where sometimes we would have to restrain our patients from hurting themselves or hurting other people, and that's what it was.
Tell me about the stress and pressure you experienced.
It was a lot of pressure because we took care of servicemen, women, dependents, wives, children from all branches of the service, and it was stressful because a lot of time when it comes to a psychiatric ward, usually you have some type of a mental problem or something is bothering you, and so we had to take special care. Also, while I worked there at the medical center on the psychiatric ward, we had a room, a psychiatric room where they actually did what they call ECT, which is electroconvulsive transmission, where they hook you up and sometimes ran electrical current through you through your brain to sometimes help get rid of depression and other problems.
Was there something special you did for good luck?
Yeah, I prayed a lot and hoped that on the ward, because we had different categories. We had patients that were severely disabled. In other words, we had categories. We had category 1 through 4. Category 1 being the most severe. Anybody that was a category 1 could not leave the ward without an escort. Without an escort, one of our technicians escorting them down to X-ray or anywhere that they had to go in the hospital, they had to have an escort. They could not be by themselves. And as the categories increased, you got more freedom when you got up to a category 4, which is where you were just about able to be discharged or returned back to service. You had freedom. You could go where you wanted to go in the hospital.
How did people entertain themselves?
Well, being on the psychiatric ward, we had to have things for people to do, activities. We had a pool table on the ward, we had a ping pong table, we had cards, a lot of cards. People played card games. The patients would play card games amongst themselves to entertain, to unwind, just to sit there and talk and compare stories and just chit chat with one another. We had TVs all over so they could watch TVs and whatever they wanted to do.
Where all did you travel while in the service?
Because of my specialty code, and like I said, there was only 4 bases in the United States that had the facilities for the job code that I had. After my basic training in tech school, I spent my entire 3.5 years of the rest of my service time at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Medical Center.
Do you recall any unusual events?
Yes, I do. On one occasion, as I said earlier, I was the NCO, or non-commissioned officer, in charge of my shift. I had came home for leave, on military leave. While I was home on leave, I found out that one of the corpsmen, one of my co-workers, because we had, like I said, we had people with all types of problems. We had a MP, which is a military policeman, that was on our unit, and he was severely depressed and had some major problems. And what happened, one of his roommates, because they were armed and they had carried 38s, they carried guns, snuck a gun into, when he visited him, snuck a gun into the room. And this individual, when he left the gun with the patient. That patient, being a category 1, was supposed to always be with another corpsman with an escort. One of my corpsmen that was filling in for me while I was on leave saw this patient by himself, realizing that that shouldn't have happened. Well, when he approached this patient, the patient pulled out the gun that the guy had brought to his room and shot him. He did injury, he got shot in the arm, and then that patient turned the gun on himself and shot himself in the head.
Do you have any photographs when you were in the service?
I have a couple of photographs when I was living in barracks. Some of my co-workers, fellow medics.
What do you think of the officers or fellow soldiers?
We had captains, majors, lieutenant colonels. In our, those were the officers that were in charge of the unit, and they were all outstanding service people.
Tell me about the day your service ended.
That was a happy day for me. I had, you accumulate time while you're in the service. I had saved all my vacation time so I could just collect a lump sum payment, because I had a wife that had returned back to Peoria during the last 6 months of my service to find us a place to stay, and also for her to get a job. And so I was happy when my time was over.
What did she do in the days and weeks after?
After I got released from the service, got discharged, honorable discharge, like I had started to work for Caterpillar before my entry into the service. So I had approximately, I think, 4 weeks to return to that job if I wanted, and my service time would have been retroactive from the day that I had hired in at Caterpillar.
Did you make any close friendships while in the service?
Yes, I did. I made friends with people from all over, other servicemen, from Philadelphia, from Hershey, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, New York, because there were servicemen from all over.
Did you continue any of those relationships?
Yeah, I continued some of those relationships for several years.
Are you involved in any veterans organizations?
No, I am not. I'm still a VFW member, though, Veterans of Foreign Wars.
Where did you go on, what did you go on to do as a career after the military?
After serving my 4 years in the Air Force, I had, like I said, I worked at Caterpillar prior to going into the service. I had put in for an apprentice program at Caterpillar. I was accepted as a metal pattern maker, which is a 4-year apprenticeship, 8,000 hours of classroom and on-the-job training. And I graduated from that program and was a journeyman pattern maker at Caterpillar.
Did your military experience influence you thinking about war or about the military in general?
I thought about it because I had a nephew that was served during the Gulf War. I have a daughter currently serving. She served in Operation Iraqi Freedom for 18 months in Iraq. So I've got family members, uncles, brothers, cousins that have served this country.
How did your service and experience affect your life?
It affected me that going into service, you know, never having been away from home, it made you grow up fast. You had to listen. It disciplined me as well as the other members of my battalion or my group. We all had to grow up fast because they said one of the mottos was cooperate and graduate, because if you did something wrong, everybody in the unit suffered.
Is there anything you would like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
Just that I believe that my time in the service was a good thing. I think that all young men and women should experience it for at least 2 years military service, so it helps them to grow up and to view the world a little different.
Well, it was nice interviewing you, and thank you for sending out the picture.
Thank you very much. Thank you.